Commander Ilara Voss sighed as she stepped off the transport shuttle onto the gleaming deck of yet another space station. After 15 years as the Galactic Coalition's top ship inspector, they all looked the same to her: efficient, sterile, and utterly boring. "Commander Voss, welcome to Station Epsilon 7, said a nervous-looking Zentari official, his blue skin glistening under the artificial lights. "We are honored by your presence." Ilara nodded curtly. Her reputation preceded her everywhere she went. The Zentari's antennae quivered slightly, a clear sign of anxiety. She was used to this reaction. Throughout the galaxy, shipbuilders dreaded her inspections. "Let's not waste time," she replied, checking her tablet. "I have 3 vessels to evaluate today." The Zentari escorted her to the first ship, a Paxian diplomatic cruiser with sleek lines and pearlescent hull plating. The captain, a tall avian being, proudly displayed the vessel's features as they walked through its corridors. "This engine configuration is 15% more efficient than standard Coalition specifications," the Paxian captain chirped, gesturing toward the humming core. Ilara barely looked up from her notes. "Yet your power distribution network uses outdated junction nodes," she remarked. "Replace them before your next evaluation." The captain's feathers drooped noticeably. No one ever met Commander Voss's standards. By midday, Ilara had inspected 2 more ships. She found 17 flaws in the Diraxian mining vessel and 23 in the Quarren passenger liner. Both captains left with their pride wounded and long lists of required improvements. Back in her temporary quarters, Ilara reviewed her findings without enthusiasm. Every ship followed the same basic design principles established by the Coalition hundreds of years ago. Efficient? Yes. Safe? Certainly. Interesting? Not in the slightest. Her communication panel chimed, displaying the stern face of Admiral Krell. "Commander Voss," the Admiral said without preamble, "you're being reassigned effective immediately." Ilara raised an eyebrow. This was unusual. "May I ask where?" "Earth," replied the Admiral. "They've completed their first true interstellar vessel and have formally requested Coalition inspection as part of their membership application." "Earth?" Ilara couldn't hide her surprise. They've barely had spaceflight for 2 centuries. What could they possibly contribute to the Coalition fleet? Admiral Krell's expression remained neutral. "That's precisely what you'll determine. Earth has been persistent in their application. Their representatives insist their ship design offers unique advantages." Ilara almost laughed. Every emerging spacefaring species believed they had revolutionary ideas. None ever did. "When do I leave?" she asked, already knowing she would find the same derivative designs wrapped in primitive technology. "Tomorrow. The transport departs at 600. The Admiral paused. "Try to be diplomatic, Commander. These humans are sensitive about their accomplishments." After the call ended, Ilara pulled up the limited data on Earth's vessel. The specifications were largely classified, but the basics seemed standard enough. She scrolled through images of smiling human faces at their ship's construction ceremony. So much emotion over what was essentially just another assembly of metal and circuits. As she packed her inspection kit that evening, Ilara wondered how many flaws she would find in this human ship. 50. 100. Emerging spacefaring races always made the same mistakes, thinking they'd reinvented spaceflight when they were merely repeating history. She closed her case with a snap. One more inspection. One more disappointment. After 15 years, Commander Ilara Voss no longer expected to be surprised by anything she saw among the stars. She had no idea how wrong she was. The Earth orbital shipyard came into view as Ilara's transport vessel decelerated. Unlike the elegant ring structures of most Coalition stations, the human facility was an ungainly collection of modules connected by skeletal walkways. Practical, perhaps, but lacking the refined aesthetics she was accustomed to. "Commander Voss, we're cleared for docking," the pilot informed her. Ilara gathered her inspection materials and stood by the airlock. First impressions mattered in her line of work, and she intended to set the proper tone immediately. These humans needed to understand that coalition standards were non-negotiable. The airlock cycled open, revealing a welcoming party of 3 humans in crisp blue uniforms. At their center stood a man with broad shoulders and a confident smile that Ilara found immediately suspicious. No captain smiled during an inspection. "Commander Voss," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Captain Daniel Wright of the U.S. Horizon. Welcome to Earth space." Ilara stared at his outstretched hand, vaguely remembering a briefing about human greeting customs. Reluctantly, she shook it. "Captain Wright, I'm here to conduct a thorough inspection of your vessel according to coalition protocols." His smile didn't falter. "We're looking forward to it. We've prepared everything according to the guidelines you sent ahead." "Most species do," Ilara replied flatly. "Few pass on their first attempt." A flicker of something, not quite irritation, but determination, crossed the captain's face. "Well, we're eager to learn from your expertise." As they walked through the station, Ilara noticed the unusual number of human workers moving about. Most advanced civilizations automated their shipyards almost entirely. "Why so much manual labor?" she asked, watching a group of humans welding a support beam. Captain Wright glanced at the workers. "We find that human eyes catch things machines miss. Plus, our people take pride in building ships with their own hands." "Inefficient," Ilara muttered, making a note. They reached a viewport that offered the first clear view of the human vessel. Ilara paused, momentarily caught off guard. The ship was unlike any she had inspected before. Where coalition vessels favored perfect symmetry and streamlined curves, the U.S. Horizon had a rugged, almost patchwork appearance. Its hull featured unexpected angles and protrusions that seemed to defy conventional space design. "That's your interstellar vessel?" She couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. "She doesn't look like much by your standards, I'm sure," Captain Wright said, his pride evident despite her reaction. "But we think you'll find her capabilities impressive." Before Ilara could respond, an announcement echoed through the station. "Attention all personnel. Prepare for ceremonial boarding of the U.S. Horizon. Honor guard to main airlock." Captain Wright turned to her with an apologetic smile. "I hope you'll indulge us in a small welcome ceremony. It's tradition for a ship's first official inspection." Ilara frowned. "Is this necessary?" "My schedule." "It'll only take 15 minutes, he assured her. "It means a lot to the crew." When they reached the ship's main airlock, Ilara was stunned to find 2 lines of humans in formal uniforms, standing at rigid attention. A young woman held a peculiar object, some kind of animal horn mounted on a wooden base. "What is this?" Ilara whispered to Captain Wright. "A boatswain's whistle. Naval tradition dating back centuries," he explained. "When important visitors come aboard, we announce them properly." As Ilara stepped through the airlock, the whistle sounded, a piercing, musical tone that made her wince. The entire honor guard saluted in perfect unison. "Commander Ilara Voss, Galactic Coalition Ship Inspector, arriving," announced a crewman. The formality of it all was so unexpected that Ilara didn't know how to respond. Throughout her career, inspections had been purely technical affairs, not ceremonial events. "Now," Captain Wright said, still smiling as the honor guard dispersed, "shall we begin the tour? I think you'll find the Horizon full of surprises." Ilara composed herself and opened her tablet. "Yes, Captain. Let's see if your surprises meet coalition standards." But as they moved deeper into the ship, she couldn't shake the feeling that this inspection might be different after all. Captain Wright led Ilara through the main corridor of the U.S. Horizon, gesturing proudly as they walked. Unlike the smooth, featureless halls of coalition vessels, the human ship had exposed conduits running along the ceiling and walls, marked with colorful stripes and symbols. "You haven't enclosed your service systems," Ilara noted, taking out her tablet to record the violation. Wright nodded, not looking concerned. "Deliberately. We can access any system for repair without removing panels. Saves critical time during emergencies." Ilara paused her typing. The approach was unorthodox, but had a certain logic. Still, it violated aesthetic standards. The external hull design, she said, changing topics. It's asymmetrical. Coalition guidelines specifically recommend balanced mass distribution. Ah, that's where I should introduce you to our chief engineer. Wright tapped his communication badge. Lisa, we're heading your way. They turned into a large chamber that Ilara immediately recognized as the engine room, though it was unlike any she had seen before, where coalition ships housed their power cores in sealed, sterile environments. This room buzzed with activity. Engineers moved between workstations, and holographic displays filled the air with data streams. A woman with curly hair tied back in a practical bun looked up from a console and waved them over. Smudges of some dark substance marked her uniform, something that would never be permitted on a coalition vessel. Commander Voss, this is Chief Engineer Lisa Morales, the genius behind our propulsion system, Wright said. Lisa wiped her hands on a cloth before offering one to Ilara. Welcome aboard, Commander. I've been hoping to get a coalition expert's opinion on our drive design. Your external configuration violates several coalition guidelines, Ilara stated bluntly. The asymmetry alone is intentional. Lisa finished, grinning. She tapped a command into her console, bringing up a 3D model of the ship. See these protrusions on the port side? They're radiation baffles for our primary reactor. By positioning them asymmetrically, we've increased efficiency by 22% while reducing crew exposure to nearly zero. Ilara frowned. But the structural integrity actually improved. Lisa interrupted again, spinning the model. The irregular mass distribution creates resonance patterns that dampen vibrations during FTL transition. We stumbled on it by accident during early tests. Ilara made notes, unsure how to classify these deviations. They weren't exactly flaws if they served a purpose, but they certainly weren't standard. What about your propulsion system? She asked, noticing the unusual configuration of the engine core. Lisa's eyes lit up. That's where things get interesting. Instead of the standard antimatter reactor, we've developed a modified fusion drive that incorporates. It's classified, Captain Wright cut in gently, but we can show you the performance stats. Lisa nodded and pulled up a new display showing velocity curves and energy output readings. Ilara's eyes widened slightly. If these figures were accurate, the human ship could maintain FTL speeds with significantly less fuel than comparable coalition vessels. These readings can't be correct, she said, examining the data more closely. They are, Lisa assured her. We've verified them on 3 test runs to Alpha Centauri and back. Ilara moved through the engine room, noting more peculiarities. Backup systems sat next to primary ones instead of being housed separately. Manual override controls accompanied automated systems. Everything about the design seemed to prioritize adaptability over efficiency. Your entire approach violates fundamental principles of interstellar engineering, Ilara said, though with more curiosity than condemnation now. Captain Wright exchanged a glance with Lisa. We prefer to think of it as expanding those principles, Commander. As they continued the tour, Ilara found herself filling her tablet with notes, but not all were violations. Some were questions. Why this configuration? What purpose did that feature serve? The human ship wasn't just different. It seemed to operate on an entirely different philosophy of space travel. Next, I'd like to show you our life support systems, Wright said, leading her toward another section. I think you'll find our approach there particularly unconventional. For the first time in years, Ilara found herself genuinely curious about what she would see next. Our life support section is through here, Captain Wright said, leading Ilara down a corridor that unexpectedly widened into what appeared to be a garden. Ilara stopped abruptly. Real plants grew in carefully arranged beds along the walls and ceiling. Water trickled through small channels between the planters, creating a gentle ambient sound that seemed wildly out of place on a spacecraft. What is this? She asked, unable to hide her surprise. Lisa smiled. Our primary oxygen regeneration system. We call it the greenhouse. Plants. Ilara's tone was incredulous. Coalition vessels use chemical scrubbers and synthetic oxygen generators. They're 43% more space efficient. True, Wright nodded, but our system has advantages your scrubbers don't. Lisa ran her hand over a leafy green plant. These plants don't just produce oxygen, they provide psychological benefits for the crew, fresh food supplements, and act as natural radiation sponges. Plus, when something breaks in a chemical system, you need replacement parts. When something goes wrong here, we have seeds. Ilara made more notes, struggling to categorize what she was seeing. The approach was inefficient by coalition standards, yet oddly practical for long-duration missions where resupply might be impossible. "Show me your emergency systems," she requested, trying to regain her professional detachment. Wright led her to a nearby room filled with equipment that looked almost primitive compared to coalition technology. Manual fire suppression tools hung on the walls alongside medical kits. "What are these?" Ilara pointed to a row of metal cranks attached to various control panels. "Manual overrides," Lisa explained. "Every critical system on the horizon can be operated without power if necessary." By hand. Ilara couldn't hide her disbelief. Wright demonstrated, turning one of the cranks. A panel nearby lit up with minimal power. "We can maintain life support for 3 weeks using only mechanical energy if we lose all power. But the effort required is significant," Lisa acknowledged. "But we'd rather have tired arms than be dead in space." As they continued the tour, Ilara discovered more surprises. The ship's navigation system had both digital AI plotting and paper star charts. Communications included advanced quantum entanglement technology alongside basic radio. Even the weapons systems had manual targeting backups. "This redundancy is excessive," Ilara noted as they entered the crew quarters section. "We prefer thorough," Wright replied good-naturedly. The living spaces were another revelation. Unlike the utilitarian pods on coalition ships, human quarters contained personal items, photographs, and comfortable furnishings. One room they passed had actual books on a shelf, physical paper books. "Why waste space on these comforts?" Ilara asked. Lisa's expression grew serious. "Because space is dangerous and lonely, Commander. Humans need more than just survival to function well. We need to feel at home." They reached the ship's mess hall, which resembled a casual restaurant more than a functional feeding area. Actual cooking equipment lined one wall instead of standard food synthesizers. "Don't tell me you prepare food manually as well," Ilara said. Wright grinned. "Only for special occasions. But yes, we can. The smell of real cooking does wonders for morale during long missions." As they sat down for a brief rest, Ilara reviewed her notes. The ship had dozens of violations by coalition standards, yet each seemed to serve a distinct purpose. The humans hadn't simply failed to meet specifications, they'd deliberately chosen different priorities. "Commander," Lisa said, interrupting her thoughts, "I understand our approach seems strange to you. But consider this. In deep space, when something goes catastrophically wrong, what matters isn't efficiency. It's adaptability." Wright nodded in agreement. "Every aspect of this ship is designed with one question in mind: what happens when things go wrong far from help? Because in our experience, they always do." Ilara found herself without an immediate rebuttal. Coalition designs prioritized preventing failures through standardization and automation. The human approach assumed failure would occur and built multiple paths to recovery. "I'd like to see your bridge next," she said finally, closing her tablet. As they stood to leave, emergency lights suddenly flashed throughout the ship. "Captain Wright to the bridge immediately," came an urgent voice over the communication system. "We have a situation." The corridor lights shifted to a deep red as Captain Wright, Lisa, and Ilara rushed toward the bridge. Crew members moved with practiced efficiency, no panic visible despite the alarm. "Report," Wright demanded as they entered the bridge, a surprisingly compact space, dominated by workstations arranged in a semicircle. A young officer looked up from her console. Station power grid is failing, Captain. Main reactor showing critical instability. They're evacuating non-essential personnel. Ilara stepped forward. This is a serious situation. Coalition protocol requires all docked vessels to disconnect and move to safe distance. She pulled out her communication device. I should contact my transport. Wright held up his hand. Wait. He turned to his navigation officer. Ben, what's our status? We're still hard docked, sir. Power umbilicals fully connected. Wright looked at Lisa. If the station reactor goes critical, what's our exposure? Lisa quickly worked her console. Radiation shields will hold, but the blast wave could damage our port nacelles. More concerning, there are 3 Zenturi transport ships docked that don't have our shielding capabilities. Ilara frowned. Captain, standard procedure is clear. We must disconnect all ships immediately. Wright ignored her, studying the station schematic on the main display. The problem is in their cooling system. Back pressure building in the primary coolant loop. We could reroute through our systems, Lisa suggested. The Horizon's cooling capacity is triple what we need. That violates at least 7 coalition safety protocols. Ilara objected. You'd be connecting your ship directly to a failing reactor system. Wright turned to her with unexpected intensity. Those transports have over 300 civilians aboard, Commander. If we follow your protocols, they're at severe risk. Before Ilara could respond, a communication from the station commander appeared on screen. The man looked stressed, sweat visible on his forehead. Captain Wright, we're initiating emergency protocols. All ships must disengage immediately. Sir, Wright replied calmly, we believe we can help stabilize your reactor. Request permission to interface our cooling systems with your primary loop. That's not standard procedure, the station commander said hesitantly. No, but it might save your station and those civilian ships. My chief engineer can make the necessary connections in under 10 minutes. A moment of silence followed as the station commander considered. Ilara watched the interaction with growing disbelief. No coalition captain would ever propose such a risky maneuver. Do it, the station commander finally decided. And hurry. Wright nodded to Lisa, who was already heading toward the door. I'll need 2 engineering teams at junction points Alpha and Gamma, she called out as she left. Ilara followed Wright to a secondary control station, where he began rerouting ship systems. Captain, you're risking your vessel and crew. The coalition will not approve. With respect, Commander, Wright interrupted, hands moving rapidly over his controls. Approval isn't my priority right now. Saving lives is. The next 7 minutes passed in a blur of activity. Wright coordinated with his crew while Lisa's voice reported progress from the connection points. Ilara watched as the humans modified systems on the fly, bypassing safety interlocks and creating new pathways between ship and station. Connection complete, Lisa finally reported. Starting coolant transfer. Now. Everyone on the bridge held their breath as they watched the station's reactor temperature readings. For several tense seconds, nothing changed. Then, slowly, the numbers began to drop. It's working, the navigation officer announced. Station reactor temperature declining. Pressure normalizing. A cheer erupted on the bridge. Wright allowed himself a brief smile before returning to his console. Lisa, how's our system handling the load? We're at 82% capacity, well within tolerance. We can maintain this for 3 hours if needed. The station commander's face reappeared on screen, relief evident. Captain Wright, you've saved this station and everyone aboard. I don't know how to thank you. Just doing what we can, Wright replied modestly. We'll maintain cooling support until your teams can repair the primary system. As the immediate crisis passed, Ilara stood silently, reviewing what she had just witnessed. The human ship had done something no coalition vessel could have accomplished, not because of superior technology, but because of its flexible design and the crew's willingness to improvise. For the first time in her career, Ilara Voss found herself genuinely impressed. 2 hours after the crisis, Ilara sat alone in a small conference room aboard the U.S. Horizon. Her inspection tablet displayed dozens of notes, observations, and technical readings she had collected throughout the day. By coalition standards, the human vessel had failed spectacularly, over 40 direct violations of design protocols, and nearly twice as many recommended improvements. And yet, Ilara closed her eyes, remembering the smooth efficiency with which the crew had responded to the station emergency. No coalition ship could have interfaced with an alien facility so quickly or adapted its systems to serve an unplanned purpose. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Captain Wright entered with 2 steaming cups. "Coffee," he explained, setting one before her. "Our unofficial fuel source." Ilara accepted the cup cautiously. "Thank you. I've been reviewing my findings." Wright took a seat across from her. "And how many violations did we rack up?" 83, she replied honestly. "A new record." To her surprise, Wright chuckled. "Better than we expected, actually." Ilara took a sip of the bitter drink, gathering her thoughts. "Captain, I'm struggling to reconcile what I've observed today. Your ship violates numerous coalition standards, yet it just performed a rescue operation no coalition vessel could have managed." Wright nodded thoughtfully. "Standards exist for good reasons, Commander, but they're based on known problems and solutions. Humans are newcomers to interstellar travel. We face problems your coalition solved centuries ago. So you reinvented solutions." "Some, yes, but we also brought our own experiences." Wright leaned forward. Earth ships faced different challenges. Isolated voyages, limited resources, the need to adapt quickly. Our maritime and early space traditions shaped our approach. Ilara pulled up an image from her previous inspection, a Centauri cruiser with perfect symmetry and efficiency. This ship passed all coalition standards with high marks. Yet today, it would have been useless. "Different designs for different purposes," Wright suggested. "Perhaps." Ilara scrolled through more images of ships she had inspected over the years. Each one reflected the same philosophy: standardized, efficient, safe, and increasingly boring. She realized something had been bothering her for years: the homogenization of space travel. Every advanced species eventually built the same ships, following the same rules, solving the same problems in identical ways. "What happens," she asked slowly, "when we face a problem no one has encountered before? When standardized solutions fail?" Wright smiled. "That's exactly the question that drove our design philosophy. Space is vast and unpredictable. No matter how many regulations we create, the universe will always surprise us." Ilara set down her tablet. "I must consult with my superiors about this inspection." "Of course." Wright stood. "In the meantime, would you like to see the rest of the ship? There's much more to show you." "Actually," Ilara said, surprising herself, "I'd like to speak with your crew. Not just the officers, the regular crew members who work in different sections." Wright raised an eyebrow. "That's not standard for coalition inspections, is it?" "No," Ilara admitted. "It's not." An hour later, Ilara found herself in the crew lounge, surrounded by off-duty personnel eager to talk about their ship. Unlike the formal, reserved manner of coalition crews, these humans spoke with genuine passion about their roles and responsibilities. A young navigation specialist described improvised solutions during a solar storm. An environmental technician explained how she had modified her station to accommodate her shorter height. A security officer showed Ilara a personal communication device he had adapted to serve as an emergency beacon. Every story reflected the same theme: adaptation, personalization, improvement beyond the specifications. As she listened, Ilara realized she was experiencing something she hadn't felt in years: genuine curiosity. The human approach to space travel wasn't just different, it was refreshing. Where coalition design sought perfection through standardization, humans embraced imperfection as a path to innovation. For the first time in her long career, Ilara Voss wasn't simply inspecting a ship. She was learning from it. Commander Ilara Voss stood before the Coalition Review Board, her formal uniform immaculate, as 6 senior officials studied her with curious expressions. For 15 years, her inspection reports have followed a predictable pattern: detailed, critical, and rigorous. The report now displayed on the main screen before them was anything but typical. "Commander Voss," Admiral Krell began, "your recommendation regarding the human vessel U.S. Horizon is unexpected. Perhaps you could elaborate." Ilara straightened her shoulders. "Admiral, members of the board, my inspection revealed numerous deviations from Coalition standards, as detailed in Section 3 of my report. However, I witnessed this vessel successfully manage a crisis that would have defeated any ship built to our specifications." A Zentari board member leaned forward. "You propose we not only approve this non-compliant vessel but suggest adopting some of its design elements. This contradicts 15 years of your own recommendations." "Yes, it does," Ilara admitted calmly. "And that realization has forced me to reconsider our approach to standardization." She activated her tablet, projecting images of the Horizon's unique features. "The human vessel incorporates multiple redundancies we would consider wasteful. It sacrifices efficiency for adaptability. It allows for individual crew adjustments rather than enforcing uniform operations." She paused, and when faced with an unexpected crisis, these very flaws became advantages. "But our standards ensure safety across all Coalition space," argued another board member. "They ensure predictability," Ilara countered, "which serves us well until we encounter something unpredictable, as we inevitably will in space exploration." Admiral Krell studied her carefully. "You've never given a vessel this high a rating, Commander. Not once in 15 years. No ship has ever impressed me enough to warrant it," Ilara replied simply. After the hearing concluded, Ilara waited in a small anteroom for the board's decision. Captain Wright had transmitted a message earlier, inquiring about the outcome. She hadn't responded yet, unsure herself what the Coalition would decide. The door opened, and Admiral Krell entered alone. "That was quite a presentation, Commander." "Thank you, Admiral. You realize you've disrupted 15 years of established protocol. Some board members are concerned about your objectivity." Ilara met his gaze directly. "My job has always been to evaluate ships based on their fitness for space travel. The Horizon changed my understanding of what that means." Krell nodded slowly. "The board has approved your recommendation. Earth will be granted provisional membership in the Coalition, and a joint design committee will study potential incorporations of human innovation into our vessels." Relief flowed through her. "A wise decision, Admiral." "There's more," Krell continued. "Captain Wright has officially requested that you join the Horizon's maiden voyage as a Coalition observer. 6 months studying human operations in deep space." Ilara blinked in surprise. "That's not a standard assignment for an inspector." "No," Krell agreed with a hint of amusement. "But as you've recently reminded us, standard isn't always better." 2 weeks later, Ilara stood on the bridge of the U.S. Horizon as final launch preparations were completed. Her small quarters had been customized with a few personal items, something she'd never bothered with during her brief stays on other vessels. "All systems ready, Captain," the operations officer reported. Wright turned to Ilara with a smile. "Commander Voss, would you like to give the order? It seems fitting, as you're the reason we're here." Ilara hesitated, then nodded. "U.S. Horizon, clear all moorings and proceed to departure coordinates. Let's see what this ship can really do." As the engines hummed to life, Ilara felt something she hadn't experienced since her earliest days as an inspector: genuine excitement about what lay ahead. For years, she had evaluated ships based on their adherence to known standards. Now she would help explore new ones. The human vessel moved gracefully away from the station, its unconventional design gleaming in the starlight. In her 15-year career, Ilara Voss had inspected hundreds of ships from dozens of worlds. But until she saw this human one, none had ever truly impressed her. or shown her how much more there was to discover among the stars.